What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 187 of the Stand Up Guys podcast. I host the incomparable Zach Jones, joined by nobody this week, flying solo. AJ got a new job, so our schedules are a little more difficult to line up. So I thought I'd try something a little new this week and fly solo here. And we'll see how you guys like it. Today I'm going to be reviewing Furiosa. And before, eventually, I will do here in a little bit. I will do a very spoiler-heavy, probably the most in-depth review you'll find online. Probably more in-depth than you'd ever need to go. But that's what I do for the people. But before I go balls deep on this review, we like to start off with a skin deep review. This is where I'm just going to give my general impressions, spoiler free impressions of the film. And I'm going to tell you whether I think you should skip this movie, wait for streaming, or if it is indeed worth seeing on the big screen. So, Furiosa, of course, this is a prequel to Mad Max Fury Road, a movie that I absolutely love, that caught me by surprise when it came out in 2015, I believe. Because at that point I had never seen it. To be honest, still haven't seen it. Probably shouldn't even admit to this, but I have not seen the Mel Gibson Mad Max movies. One of these days, maybe I'll get around to it. But I absolutely did love Fury Road, and so this is definitely one of my most anticipated films of this year. And I got to say, it did not disappoint. I really had a great time with Furiosa. And, the first question people are going to ask is it as good as Fury Road? And the answer is no. It's not as good as Fury Road. But that's not anything bad necessarily, because Mad Max Fury Road is so good. This movie was always going to have a hard time quite living up to Fury Road. But that being said, I think it does a great job. I thought this was a very thrilling, well put together movie, and I had a great time with it. Um, you know, Prequels are always tricky because it's that thing where you know the destination, right? You know where you're going to end up, but the question is the destination worth the journey? And the answer here is absolutely. Furiosa, great time at the movies. Performance wise, Chris Hemsworth as the villain Dementus, I thought was great. Yeah, he's got a big old prosthetic nose, and his accent very unique, very kind of nasally, maybe like I was thinking maybe kind of like a New Zealand type accent. Not that I have any special knowledge of accents, but that's kind of what it sounded like to me. Anya Taylor-Joy, it's funny because she's one of those people, like, her character is not dialogue heavy, so really it's just her performance is mostly just facial, and she has very expressive eyes, which is probably one of the reasons they cast her in this role with limited amount of speaking. But I thought she did great too. And then there's also a lot of the same characters from Fury Road you'll see here in this movie. Although I believe the actor who played Immortan Joe in Fury Road passed away. So I think there's a different actor behind all the, costuming, but still works just fine. Seems like the same character in the way he's written and mannerisms and everything. And you also see some of God, I forget the character. They have funny character names too, but the guy from Fury Road that has like the fake nose, and he had like the bad case of gout in Fury Road. Always, like, he's got like the nipple chains. Always played with his nipples. That guy's just over the top disgusting, but it totally works. Just so many colorful characters in these movies. Um, I will say I heard because you know Fury Road. The amazing thing about Fury Road is so many of the effects they did was practical, and like Fury Road's one of those movies I watch, and I'm like, I do not know how 100 stuntmen didn't die filming this movie. Um, and really, I think if you ever wanted to exhibit A for why the Oscars should have a stunt category, like Fury Road was it. Just amazing stunt work, and a lot of amazing stunt work in this movie as well. Now, I have heard that this movie, just for like ease of shooting and also just the experience they had making Fury Road, that this movie does have a lot more CG in it than Fury Road did. But to me, it looked great. Like there really some of the there's especially towards the middle of the movie, a big, you know, mid chase like vehicle fight like he had in Fury Road, and it's thrilling. And I'll give it up to him. They come up with some. They have a lot of new ideas for what the guys could do that they did not do in Fury Road. Even though this is a prequel, I guess so they would have had the same uh, technology, technology, assumingly that they could have used in Fury Road. Maybe that's the problem with doing prequels sometimes. But I'll get to it when I get into spoilers. But that part of the movie was my favorite part of the movie, and I thought there was just like it was just like that block is maybe like a 20 to 30 minute just like straight action scene, and it's fantastic the whole way through. I really love that. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think people can probably guess my answer already as to what I recommend you see in this in a theater, and the answer is 100%. You should see this in a theater. It's worth the big screen experience. I will say, disappointingly, this movie is not, at least first week, not doing well at the box office, and could maybe even probably will lose money. I think the worldwide gross opening weekend is somewhere between like 64 and 66 million. I think the budget I want to say was something like 160 some million, and then you got to figure in general rule of thumb. They say usually you can almost double that for like advertising costs and such things. So it's definitely got an uphill battle if it's going to make any money. So, if you're watching this and you're kind of on the fence, or you're like, oh, it'll probably be streaming in a couple weeks, which, hey, that's what they did with the Fall Guy, so it wouldn't surprise me. But I say don't do that. I say this is definitely one of the movies this year that's worth your money to go to the theater, and it's a good time. Trust me, it's a great time. Funny talking about the the whole state of the movie industry, and a lot of big movies flopping and stuff. I follow David Jaffe on Twitter. He is, of course, if you're not familiar, used to be a video game designer. Worked on the Twisted Metal franchise, the original God of War, and many others. He's an interesting guy. He's got a YouTube channel too. I suggest people give him a listen. He's a funny guy as well, but also just has some great insights into the video game industry. But he tweeted something I thought was interesting, which is what's happening to the movie industry. He thinks is kind of akin of what happened to the arcade industry, and how in the 80s arcades were this huge thing. Everybody went to them, had a great time, and then late 80s, early 90s, they start to dwindle down and down and down. And so now arcades, they're still around, but they're this kind of really niche thing. And basically what he said is, the reason it happened is because the playing at home experience through, console and PC wasn't necessarily as good as the arcade experience. In some cases, maybe not, but it was good enough. And he thinks a similar thing is happening now to where, and I kind of agree with him. Let's be honest, most of us these days have like good sized televisions with fantastic resolution, pretty good sound. And if they don't have good sound, you have you can buy a sound bar, you have other surround sound options to where you can get pretty dang good sound. Now, is that sound and picture ever as good as the theater experience? No, but also you don't have the inconveniences of the theater. I think for me the biggest thing is you get to the theater and you're almost punished if you go there on time. It's almost like a sucker's game to actually show up to a movie screening on time, because you're going to have to sit through not only a million trailers, but also like whatever theater chain you're at, you're going to get their stupid advertisements as well. And so by the time you actually get to your movie, you're like exhausted. You're just like, good God, get on with it. And I think it's something. And I get that people have their smaller. Some people have access to probably smaller theaters that don't do that kind of stuff, quite as bad. That maybe have. I heard it's like some smaller theaters are even like we'll only play 3 trailers and then get to your movie or whatever, which is cool. But majority of people are going to be going to chain theater spots, and they're going to be sitting through just an ungodly amount of advertising. And like I'm a person, like I like movie trailers. I don't mind a couple of them, but sometimes it gets egregious how many they show you before that you actually get to the movie you're watching. So I think that plays into it. And then also like, and I know this has been brought up, but the shortening of the window from the theatrical screening to going to streamers, it's shortening. And it's like I totally get if you're on a fence of a movie and you're not completely sold and you're just like, yeah, I'll wait a month or two. That's fine. Like, I get it. I've done it for movies. Like, it makes sense to, you're only going to go to the theater for those movies you're really, really pumped to see. So, but I don't know. I hope the theater scene, never becomes quite as niche as arcades, but we might be heading that direction. It's I think it'll be a couple interesting years coming up to see box office and kind of trends of people seeing movies theatrically. Okay, with that out of the way, I think I will get into spoiler territory. So yeah, from this point forward, I'm going to give as detailed a breakdown of the plot as I could remember in my notes here, and kind of examine what I think of certain scenes, and hopefully you'll follow along. And definitely let me know, do you prefer just the shorter, spoiler free content, or do you like me doing these deep dives? I'm legitimately interested. All right, so Furiosa. One interesting thing Furiosa did that Fury Road didn't is they actually have like chapter titles. There's 5 chapters in this movie, so kind of broken up my notes that way. So we open at chapter 1, the pole of inaccessibility, and also these notes are completely just me trying to, after watching the movie, like going and remembering everything I could as well as I could. So, like, that's why I like doing these reviews with another person that can kind of chime in and remind me of things that I forgot and such things. But I think my notes are pretty good. I got, I think I remembered quite a bit of stuff here. So let's get going. So we open in the green place that was referenced in Fury Road. If you haven't seen Fury Road, Furiosa basically grew up in this place she refers to as the green place that apparently once had like lush, vegetation. Unfortunately, Fury Road, she gets there and it's just a big desert. Of course, everything in the Mad Max world is bleak. It never is for the better. It's just always worse and worse and worse. And of course, that's what happened. But here, the green place still existed. So we got Furiosa as a child. Oh, and also I should shout out here for the first two chapters of the movie. It's the young version of Furiosa, played by Alyla Browne, and I not familiar with this actress, but I thought she did a fantastic job. So Furiosa and her friend are getting apples when a gang of marauders on motorcycles show up. Furiosa tells her friend, who I believe her name was Valkyrie, that's not important, but she's like, tells her to be quiet. So she sneaks down and she cuts the fuel line on one of these motorcycles. She goes to cut another one, but unfortunately she gets caught. Um, and I remember she tries to run away from these guys, but like one of them's like a real whip master. He like whips her and pulls her back down. So she gets caught, but she does blow a whistle, and this alerts her mom, who is in their nearby village. I wrote somehow. This is something that just stuck in my mind. When it gives this brief glimpse of her village, there is somehow like a very obese woman in the village, and everybody else is like thin as rails. And like I get that this is the green place, and they'll call it like a place of abundance. Yeah, but I'm like, did this woman get obese off of apples? And like, if so, she must be like the queen of this village. There's like a caste system where she's getting a lot more apples than your average person. So I don't know. I just thought that was funny and kind of stuck with me. That like, yeah, how's this woman so big? Um, so Furiosa's mom and another woman from the village show up on horseback just in time to see all the marauders getting away with Furiosa. The other woman on the back of the horse, she has a sniper rifle, and I gotta say, you'll find out that both her and Furiosa's mom are, man, they're crack shots. I mean, but I guess if you're desperate in the post-apocalypse, you gotta get good at shooting. Um, so the woman on the back of the horse, she snipes one of the marauders with the rifle. Sh And then she offers to go along and help Furiosa's mom, but Furiosa's mom is like, "No, they're going to need you back at the village. I'll take your gun. I'll go after these people." So she takes the gun, and the woman also gives her like a pocket full of bullets to use. Um, so we cut to the one of the marauders has Furiosa basically like bent over the front of his bike, and then there's two more marauders with him. So the guy in the back gets sniped by Furiosa's mom, and so that the other two like stop and they're like, "Oh crap, we got a sniper." So they very quickly scavenge like some stuff from the dead guy. The one guy takes his gas tank. And one thing I forget to mention is while they were riding, Furiosa noticed that she's close to the fuel line on the guy's motorcycle, and she also notices that he's got a knife in his boot or like on his leg or something like that. So Furiosa's mom shows up to where the motorcycle where she just sniped that guy, and I guess she must have been able to tell that the down bike was like a better bike than the one she had. So she basically like took because um, I think she like took the tire from the bike she was using, like put it on the other one, moved the gas tanks. Because these guys like say a line like, "Oh, I thought we made this bike inaccessible," but she was able to fix it and get it going, basically. Um, so Furiosa ends up biting, using her teeth, and because her hands are bound behind her, she uses her teeth to bite through the fuel line, which causes, of course, that guy's motorcycle to come to an end. It stops, and so he takes the extra gas can that his buddy took, takes it, uh, hooks it up to his bike, and they basically get to talking, and they reveal that their plan is to take their girl to their leader, Dementis, and tell him about the green place. And so they figure if they do that, well, they'll be in good, with Dementis, and they'll probably be rewarded. So they hear a motorcycle coming in the distance, and they're like, "Oh, that's the Thunder Cycle," and they realize that Furiosa's mom fixed up that bike. So apparently, I don't know. You get the sense that that's like a good bike, and um, that's why she took it. It was a better bike than the other one, the Thunder Cycle. Um, so then Furiosa, as these guys are talking, starts running away. And basically, it's revealed that she somehow got the guy's knife, was able to cut her ropes. Well, she still her arms are still tied behind her, but she was able to cut the rope. I think that was like tying her to the bike or whatever. Um, I believe that's the case anyway. Anyway, she runs off. Like one of the marauders runs and trips, but then the other guy's actually got a brain on him, so he gets on his motorcycle and just goes easily. Picks her back up, gets his knife back. Um, so once again, Furiosa's mom is like trailing these guys, but she notices that like these guys are getting close to their camp. So she goes up on top of this sand dune, and she's able to snipe one of them, but the other guy makes it to the camp. But so at the camp, the man tells the others about the abundant place, but he insists that he be the one to tell Dementis about it and give him Furiosa. Now, Furiosa is able to pull this move where she basically wraps, I think, like maybe the rope that's binding her or a chain or something around this guy's neck, and like she jumps off, and it basically this guy doesn't die right away, but it basically kind of breaks his neck, and like you know really messes him up, and it's gonna fatally wound him. Furiosa's mom sees that she did this through the sniper scope, and she's basically like, "Good job, girl," like because basically she's like, there it's very important that these guys cannot find the green place, of course. So now we're introduced to Dementis, who is being told about they got like a motorcycle that's like in pristine condition, and there's this old tattooed man known as the History Man, and that follows. He's like one of Dementis's like think of him as like a cabinet member or something, and he's always giving him like words of wisdom and things along these lines, and he uh, knows all these historical things. Dementis wears a white cloak with a teddy bear chained to it. In a while, we'll get the story behind the teddy bear. I will say in this scene where we first meet him, they definitely are visually. It's like he's like a messianic figure. Like he looks very Jesus like, and I think that's on purpose. Like I never went to Sunday school, can't pretend to know the Bible, but as the story goes along, I think his character definitely like they were going for some sort of biblical allegory, especially with the way his character changes as the movie goes on. Um, so they bring Furiosa to him and they tell him about the abundant place. That's what they call it rather than the green place. They're like it's the abundant place, or the place of abundance. Um, so Dementis's doctor, um, I believe characterized this called the organic mechanic. He remarks about how healthy she is, and like it makes sense that yeah, she must come from this place of abundance. Dementis tells her to tell him where she's from, but she refuses to talk, which will be a big thing with Furiosa in this movie. Uh, not a lot of words. Uh, so the man with the like bleeding neck wound is brought in, but he's like choking too bad to speak, and so we're like, well, he's full of blood, so like flip him upside down, and then he still can't talk, so they're like, we'll just point to where it is, but like he dies, so very good there. Dementis tells Furiosa that he won't hurt her, and that he will simply follow her tracks back to the green place the next day. He orders his people to give her water to drink and to wash her, and he's like, "Use my best drinking water." So as she's being washed by a woman in a tent, her mom shows up to rescue her. Her mom kills two of the male guards, but decides to spare the woman because this woman's like, I'm a mother too. And so Furiosa's mom leaves and lets her live. Then we see kind of this like, um, evil smile by this lady, indicating that she was lying. You just can't trust these post-apocalyptic marauders at all. Um, so the woman informs the others, and as Furiosa's mom is driving away on the motorcycle, like this guy like shoots. I guess he shoots um the gas tank on the back, and it like basically catches her back on fire, but she like knows she has to keep going, so she just keeps like driving out of there as fast as she can. Once they get far enough away, she gets off the bike and gets the fire put out, but she is like bleeding from her back. She hears the bad guys coming and decides the only way Furiosa can get away is if she sacrifices herself to slow them down. She gives Furiosa a seed from the green place and tells her to promise to get back home no matter what. So Furiosa drives away on the motorcycle. By the way, this is something I wasn't 100% on because I figured like the way Furiosa's mom caught on fire, that meant like the gas tank was basically donezo, but maybe not because it seemed like she thought there was still enough to get Furiosa like either home or far away. So I'm not sure exactly. Maybe that's not exactly what happened. I'm not sure. But anyway, Furiosa goes a little bit away, but then um, like her mom does pretty good. Like her mom like shoots a bunch of these guys, and then when she's out bullets, she's like beating them. But eventually the numbers are too great, and they get her mom. So Furiosa, when she hears her mom's in danger, she can't take it. She ends up running back right into like the bad guys. Dementus threatens Furiosa's mom if Furiosa won't tell her where her home is. But she's stoic and she knows what her mom wants, so she stays silent. Dementus like forces her eyes open and forces her to watch her mom die, and he even drinks her tears. And the tattoo man even says, like, the chemical composition of sad tears are different from joyous tears. And Dementus is like, yeah, the tears of sadness taste better than tears of joy or whatever. Just to really let you know this guy is not a good guy. All right, so now we're to chapter 2, Lessons of the Wasteland. So this chapter opens with Dementus's men chase a group of marauders to the edge of a cliff. This was pretty gruesome. He chains their leader to 5 motorcycles, and then he has the others fight to the death until 5 of them remain and take their place on these different motorcycles. So it's almost like a Joker from the Dark Knight situation where he like breaks the pool cue and he's like, fight it out, that kind of thing. He tells Furiosa that he has Furiosa in a cage, and he's like, tells her, you don't have to watch this, but she like continues to stare at it anyway. And he's like, here, you can hold my teddy bear, and he gives the teddy bear, and he reveals that basically this teddy bear used to belong to his children, who apparently, tragically died, like so many people in the post-apocalypse. And we get the sense that in his own head, he kind of thinks he is grooming Furiosa to be his daughter. Like, he definitely forms a even though she hates him, like, he's intrigued by her, seemingly, and I think he can see the toughness in her and kind of has a respect for her. So this gang leader ends up being drawn and quartered by the other motorcycles, and Furiosa just drops the teddy bear to the ground. So now Furiosa is being transported in a cage in this big long convoy of Dementuses. And she's next to that history man. And he tells her he could teach her to read and be a historian herself. She eventually takes his pen, and I don't know exactly. I guess it's kind of like a tattoo pen because she's going to put markings on her arm, and they'll be there for the rest. I mean, to me, it just looks like she's drawing on herself in pen. But then, like, these are on her for like the rest of the movie. So I figure, like, it's got to be somewhat of like a tattoo pen. Uh, Now, I think she draws. I'm not sure if she's drawing like a constellation of stars that kind of. She's basically drawing some sort of map that would take her back to the green place. I'm not sure if it's by stars or if she's actually like some sort of like map and like indications. Um, they probably say I might have just missed. I think it might be like constellation type stuff, but not completely sure. But at any rate, it's a map back to the green place. So as Dementus's convoy is traveling, oh yeah, and Dementus is in the lead. He's got this chariot, like Ben Hur type chariot, that's made out of three bikes bound together, and he has then like reins like on the motorcycle handles. But a part of me is like, like how does this work exactly? And also, it seems like it would be such a pain in the ass. Like, it seems like it would be so much. Like, it looks cool. I guess that's the main thing, that it looks cool. But it would be so much easier if he was just like riding some awesome, like, motorcycle. Rather, it just, I don't know. This seems like it would be a pain in the ass to get around. But hey, it works for Dementus. So as they're traveling, one of those like red smoke flares that you see in Fury Road goes off, and so they're like, "Hey, what's that? We'll go and investigate." So they discover a war boy uh, that he was apparently attacked. I think he had like an arrow sticking out of his neck or something. And they ask him if he knows where the abundant place is, and he's like, first of all, he's like stupid, so he doesn't even know what that means. But they describe it to him, and he's like, "Well, he's like, I know where the Citadel is, and it's abundant with like water and resources, Um, so like Dementus is like, okay, yeah, take us to the Citadel. So one of Dementus's men test out the flare gun. He just like shoots it on the ground, and it ends up covering Dementus's hair and cloak in the red smoke. And so this leads him to calling himself Red Dementus. And a similar name change will happen later. And this is why I'm thinking like maybe this again is some sort of like biblical allegory, but I couldn't tell you for sure. So they make their way to the Citadel. Dementus gets on the microphone and tells the people, with him as their leader, he will treat them right and give them food and water. Because if you for people who watch Fury Road, if you remember at the Citadel, like basically, it's Immortan Joe and his people live, these great, lives, and then everybody else just barely gets enough water and food to survive. Basically, they're living in squalor. So Dementus is trying to, appeal to these people. So he then demands. Oh, and by the way, like I should have brought this up in the last scene because he also used it there. Somehow he's got like one of those like almost like old timey like boxing announcer like microphones hooked to some sort of like PA system. So they bring that around everywhere. He uses it several times during the movie. But so he gets back on there and he demands that the Citadel leaders come out and surrender. So Immortan Joe, the guy I call Pigman, nipple guy with the fake nose and everything. And then Immortan Joe's son, Scrotus, and Rictus Erectus come out. Of course, Erectus is, I believe the guy's name is Nathan Jones. He used to be a pro wrestler for a short time in WWE. Just like that big hulking guy that was also in Fury Road. Maybe Scrotus was as well. I can't remember. If he was, he didn't stick out as much as Rictus. So Joe tells Dementus to pick any war boy at random. And so actually Dementus has like a squirrely guy that works for him do it. And he does. He like points up and he picks a war boy. boy by random. So this guy, he gets some of those exploding, two of those exploding spears. Like anyone who's seen Fury Road, they use them all the time. And he basically just jumps down into the crowd with those kamikaze style and just like blows up a bunch of Dementus's men. And so Joe tells him like, this is why you can't win. Like all these guys will sacrifice themselves on my behalf. You have no choice. Or you have no chance of winning. So yeah, the two sides begin to fight, and Joe's men easily get the upper hand. So during the fight, Furiosa's cage gets broken open, and she's almost like pulled like into like these like squalor caves, like but Dementus like sees that, and so he like grabs on and saves her. Now, part of me is like question Dementus here a little bit, because like we do see that like I said, he definitely sees something in Furiosa, like he respects her and everything. But a part of me is like he set up as like kind of a scumbag too. So a part of me thinks he would have just like let her go and wouldn't have fought as hard as he did to like keep her. But he does. He like pulls her back with him. But basically, him and his men end up fleeing. They can't fight Joe. So sometime later, and also timeline of this movie, there'll be a big time jump later when it switches from the young actress to Anya Taylor-Joy. But also, like even with the young actress, like I assume weeks, if not months, pass at certain points. But there's never like a thing on the screen that says this many days later. So you just kind of gotta assume some time has passed. So sometime later, Dementus plots to take over Gastown, which is the town where they produce all the they call it guzzling instead of gasoline, but yeah, it's where they produce all the gas. And it's like one of the three pillars of the Mad Max world. You got the Citadel, you got Gastown, and you got Bullet Town, which will come up later as well. So what he does is he has his men take over a tanker truck, and then he paints several of his men to look like war boys. And so they basically stage this thing to make it look like this gas tanker is being attacked by them, with his men, the war boys, dressed as war boys on top. And their ploy is like, okay, Gastown will let this tanker that's in trouble within its gates, and then his men that are dressed like the war boys will, attack everybody at Gastown and take Gastown over. Now, the leader of Gastown, he's watching this, and because like nobody's dying, he's like, no, like something's up here. Don't let them through the gates. Dementus realizes this, like they're not opening the gates, so he actually starts killing his own men, the guys he has painted up as war boys. And like he's got like another like number two guy that's even like chastises him here, like, Dementus, you're a piece of crap, whatever. He says something along those lines, like, for doing this. But that does work, and the Gastown leader lets him in. But he's also got his guys like on the underside of this tanker truck. So once they're in the gates, they get out. They easily take over Gastown. So Immortan Joe is informed that of what Dementus did, taking over Gastown, and they let him know that Dementus is coming to bargain with him. So he's like, okay, yeah, once he gets here, we'll just kill him. We'll kill Dementus. But Dementus is a little bit smarter than that. So Dementus shows up with basically like a dead man's brake kind of. He's got this remote detonator, and if it doesn't have a certain code punched in it within the hour, basically Gastown is rigged to explode, and only Dementus knows this code. So like if they kill Dementus, Gastown's going to explode, and that would set them back, a lot. Also, this was weird. When Dementus shows up, he has the leader of Gastown in like this weird contraption where he's like basically using his strength so it doesn't just like impale and kill this guy. But eventually, like he lets go of that, and like in the process, it not only kills like the leader of Gastown, but it like rips out his he had like nipple chains, and it like rips those out. So now he's like bleeding from the nipples. I mean, I don't know why that, because he already had like the setup to where like he already had the leverage of like blowing up Gastown if he's killed. So I don't know if he needed that added leverage of like the leader of Gastown like possibly dying, but hey, he had it. So basically, Dementus wants more water and supplies in exchange for gasoline. Joe refuses until he sees Furiosa, and he says like, hey, she would make a good like future bride for me. So, um, you know, throw throw her in the mix and we might have a deal. Dementus does not want to give her up. He claims that she is his daughter. Joe asks Furiosa if that's true, and again, Furiosa around Dementus like never talks, and so Dementus is like, she doesn't talk, and then of course Furiosa speaks up, and he's like, he is not my father. Not only that, he killed my mother. So this causes Dementus to reluctantly agree to make the deal with Joe. And Joe's like, also, I'm going to throw in your doctor, the organic mechanic. And he was also a guy in Fury Road um, that if he like, was a baby deliverer, psychopath too. But so Furiosa is introduced to the other brides of Joe to tell her everything is going to be okay. Sometime later, again, this is one of those things where you figure several months must have passed, most likely, but they don't really take time out and say that. Um, but sometime later, one of the brides gives birth to a deformed dead child, and the doctor says she will. She's like, please don't make me leave, and he's like, I think he's something like, you don't have a choice, but you'll make a good milker now. Because if you remember in Fury Road, they have these like women who I assume like once they were pregnant were forced to like basically be pumped for breast milk for like ever. So it's one of those situations. So as Furiosa is watching the birth, Rick just like creepily plays with her hair, and so she runs off. So back in her room, Furiosa cuts her hair off, and she uses candle wax to make a wig out of it, which then she like basically puts the wig in a hairband around to keep the wig on. In the middle of the night, Rick just grabs her and takes her to like his creepy doll workshop. For some reason, he's got like this workshop just full of like dolls and doll parts, just to, something to make him a little creepier. And he notices the markings on her arm. He's like, "What is this?" And she runs off, and he goes to grab her hair, and of course the wig comes off and allows her to get away. He chases her outside, and she loses him by hanging on the underside of this like walkway railing. So he gives up, and in frustration, he like throws her wig out, and it ends up the wig snags on this branch that's like sticking out of the cliffside, and so now we get a large time lapse where basically the branch grows and it flowers out, and so now we know, yeah, we're because it had to happen eventually where we're going to get Anya Taylor-Joy, so that's what this is. It's setting up that years have passed now, and we're going to get an actress change here. Again, I don't know if it ever tells exactly how many years. I feel like she has a line later on in the movie where she maybe says something like 15 years has passed. I might be wrong about that though. So chapter 3 now, the stowaway, and I have to say this was my favorite chapter of the movie. primarily because it has that um, a badass action scene that I referenced in the non-spoiler review. So yeah, let's get to it. So Furiosa is now grown, um, and she's still at the Citadel, but she's basically been since her hair was short, she's pretended to be both a boy and a mute, not talking, basically to you know, prevent herself from being a bride of Immortan Joe, basically. Um, she helped secure a truck. So they're hauling this truck up the cliffside, and it starts to get loose, like there's a chain that breaks or something. So she goes down on the truck, hooks the chain back up, allows them to winch it up, and she's rewarded by basically getting to be a part of the mechanic crew. I think they give her a certain title or name. I don't remember exactly what it was. We are now introduced to Praetorian Jack, and this actor, I believe his name is Tom Burke. He's got one of those faces where I'm like, I'm sure I've seen this guy in something before, but then I kind of looked at his IMDb and I'm like, well, I don't really recognize any of these things, so maybe he just has one of those faces. But I could have swore I've seen him in something. Um, he's apparently a legendary war rig driver, famous for always making his deliveries. So they are working on a big weapon that attaches to the back of the war rig, and we'll get to see that here in a bit. At one point, Furiosa's she's doing something underneath the war rig, and one of the other guys is like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And again, she doesn't talk, so she just like brings up a jar of piss, and the guy's like, hey, "It's just piss. Like, really? You had to? Why do you have to piss in private? You know, one of those things." But um, so Jack goes on a delivery, and the war rig is attacked by men who apparently used to work for Dementis, but went rogue. And this is kind of interesting because um, there's kind of this portion of the movie where like a lot of time passes and you don't really get to see what's happening with Dementis. But this is our first clue to where you figure like things aren't going well with Dementis, right? Something has to be up, or why are some of his men like leaving him and going rogue on their own? So okay, I'm not going to be able to hit everything that happens in this action scene, but this is, to me, this scene alone is worth watching this movie in the theater. This scene, I love the scene. It was just this is probably a good 20 to 30 minutes of action here, and it's all fantastic. So eventually a man on a bike gets hit, and his bike damages it kind of goes underneath the war rig. It knocks out one of the engines, and it gets stuck underneath the truck right next to the stowaway Furiosa. She's underneath the truck. So Jack sends his main mechanic, or co-pilot guy, down to fix the broken engine. He gets a short hose and a clamp to fix the engine, but then he gets hit, I think, by like an explosion or a fireball or something. And so that knocks him basically into that stuck bike by Furiosa. And then he sees her and he's like, gives her the hose and the clamp. And he's like, it's up to you to fix it. And then him and the bike become unwedged and fall out the back of the war rig. So the bad guys drive up and they end up attaching a bomb like underneath the truck right next to Furiosa. But she's able to put out the fuse, and then she takes the bomb like in she's probably got like a bag or something. She takes it with her. So while she's fixing the truck, we get some great action scenes. Again, I can't go into detail about these, but one of the new things is there's a guy like basically sand skiing behind like an enemy like car, and then he deploys a parachute, which is cool. So it goes up. So he's basically kind of like parasailing and I assume he's got like a weapons that he's like throwing down on the war rig. And then I think those guys end up dying. And then there's guys that basically use giant like fan engines to fly and attack from. They use a lot of aerial things attacks here, which I thought was cool. And of course, those guys eventually get killed too. When the war rig is attacked from the front, Furiosa emerges from underneath, and she lights the bomb that she had. And then there's happens to be a war boy right there. He takes it, he throws it on the car in front. It explodes on top of the war rig, and then it like gets knocked off. Great action scene. But basically, in that moment, Jack, the driver, he notices Furiosa. They kind of have this look, and he's like, "Oh, she's like, something." He can tell, like, she knows what she's doing. Um, oh, and then the rig also aerial things. It starts getting attacked basically by these guys on like gliders, which was cool. Furiosa is they kind of like start dive bombing with like flamethrowers. Um, and so Furiosa takes out one of them with like the mechanical claw that's set up on the war rig. Um, and then I forget the name of that new weapon they were using. One thing I forgot to set up also is like there's this little like little person dwarf war boy who operates in the very back of the war rig, and like he's the one who's supposed to operate this weapon. And she like yells at him to use it, but unfortunately, like he gets like shot and killed right then. So Furiosa goes to the back and she turns on this weapon, and basically what it is like four like dangling like maces like on like chains, and then it like starts to spin them like really fast, and so it takes out like the glider, which I believe the pilot of this glider was like Dementis's like number two guy when they were taking over Gastown. Apparently, he's one of the guys that like broke away from Dementis. So yeah, they eventually kill all the bad guys. Um, so eventually, it's just Jack and Furiosa. She holds him at gunpoint, but he easily like kicks her out of the war rig and just continues down the road. So like now she's on her own, like ugh. So she starts to walk back the way they came from, but then Jack, he apparently parked the rig way down the road and he walked back towards her, and he basically tells her like, "Come on, like you're not going to get anywhere going that way. Why don't you come with me? I'll teach you everything I know. I'll teach you to drive the war rig." And like she ends up agreeing, and she even offers like to give her gun to him, and he's like, "No, keep the gun. You're gonna need that." So um, I think that was the end of that chapter. So now we're into chapter 4 called Homeward. Um, Now I gotta say, I'm a little blurry on this part of the movie. I think they just kind of have a montage. Basically, time's passing, and Furiosa is getting trained by Jack and becoming an experienced driver. And she's also used, she might have already done it actually, but she's starting to use that grease paint, famous like grease paint on the forehead look. Um, so eventually they get a job where they are supposed to get filled up uh, the truck at Gastown. Now this is one thing. Well, let me go a little bit further. Uh, when they get to Gastown, like people are starting to rebel against Dementis. So like I alluded to earlier, like things have not been going well for Dementis. Also, Dementis now has a gray beard, looking a little older. Furiosa sees Dementis, and like she kind of like puts her hand down by her gun, like she wants to kill him. But my thing is like there's like I was saying before that there's really only three places we know about in the Mad Max universe, which is the Citadel, Gastown, and Bullet Town. So my thing is like if she's been training now for a long period of time, becoming this driver, wouldn't she have made several trips to Gastown and probably seen Dementis again? I mean, this makes it seem like this is the first time she's seen him, since before. But I'm like, that seems unlikely given the geography and like her job. I don't know. I don't know for sure. Um, but basically, Jack steps in the way between him and talks to Dementis. Dementis tells him he won't be able to give them the gas they came for, and if they want to get out of this place alive, they need to follow him right now. He's got a monster truck now, so they follow him to basically the edge of Gastown. And again, this is a place in the movie I was a little blurry on. I think he says something like, meet me at the Citadel in 3 days or something. Now, that doesn't end up happening, so I don't know if this was just a ploy by Dementis or not. I'm not 100% sure. But basically, it's like, to sort things out. So, as they're leaving, a marauder gets on board and stabs Furiosa in the shoulder. And they're able to easily, like, kill that guy or get rid of him or whatever. But she did end up getting stabbed before they could get out of there. So back at the Citadel, Joe's pissed off that they failed to get the gas and says he should kill them. Instead, he says they're going to go to war with Dementis, so he's going to send them to Bullet Town to get munitions. We get a scene where Jack patches up Furiosa. He notices the markings on her arm, and he says he has a plan to let her get away and go back home. She says that he should come with her. And so I don't know if they were hinting at a romance between these two, or if they just have a good friendship. I think they were maybe hinting at these two might like each other romantically. And she also shows him like the seed that she has. Several points in the movie, she's either hiding the seed in her hair or in her mouth, but she still has it. So before they make it to Bullet Town, he stops a war rig. He has two bikes put in the back of a car, and he tells Furiosa that she will drive the car and basically protect the back of the rig. I wrote, this is presumably to eventually give her the chance to escape. At least, I mean, they don't spell it out, but I believe that's what he's setting up for her. And they kind of have this argument for all the war boys where she's like, but I drive the rig, and he's like, well, not today. Today you're on protection duty or whatever. So it seems that he's setting that up for her to escape. But that being said, she doesn't escape before they go to Bullet Town. So they pull into Bullet Town, and they immediately get ambushed. Dementis has taken over Bullet Town. Now, this is another thing where I don't know if part of his original agreement with Joe was that he got some sort of say over Bullet Town, or if off screen where we didn't see, he just infiltrated and took over Bullet Town. That's something I'm not 100% sure on. I would probably have to watch the movie again. But anyway, Dementis is in Bullet Town. He's taken over, and he's ambushes them as soon as they get there. So before they close the gates on Bullet Town, Furiosa is able to back up that car and keep it on the outside of the gates. But the war rig and all the other people, they're trapped inside. She could leave, but she doesn't want to leave with Jack in danger. So she helps him by shooting guys through the gate with her shotgun and drawing the attention of their flamethrowers. So she's like basically standing against this big metal gate, and like, the flames are like on either side of her from the flamethrower. Eventually, they beat those guys, and Jack begins to drive the rig around Bullet Town. Furiosa notices that they're going to fire an RPG at Jack, so she gets out the sniper rifle. She's also a crack shot, and she saves him. She shoots the guy with the RPG, forces him to miss the war rig. She also ends up pinning down Dementis and some of his other men. Um, Eventually, Dementis uses one of his men to distract Furiosa, so she snipes him, but it gives Dementis enough time to fire an RPG her way. Doesn't kill her, but it basically knocks her in this pit and covers her in dirt. Uh, After that, Jack hits the pillar that Dementis is standing on, and this basically causes Dementis to, grab onto this railing for dear life, as all the bullets from Bullet Town are like cascading over him. Um, so the war rig gets hit and is knocked into a hole, and Furiosa gets out of the dirt, and she just barely is able to save Jack. But she gets on a motorcycle and it has a grappling hook, so she throws the grappling hook down. He grabs it. She gets him out on the motorcycle. So then they end up leaving Gastown in the car that Furiosa was driving. And I think to make this make sense, they probably thought that the gate and all the kind of like broken vehicles and stuff by the gate would slow Dementis down enough to where he couldn't catch up to them, because they're going away. But to me, I don't think they have enough sense of urgency. They probably should have had more. Because basically Dementis's men is like, oh, you're gonna have to go get like, a piece of machinery to get the stuff out of the gate, and he's like, no, I'm just gonna bulldoze it down with my monster truck. So he basically just hits it several times with his monster truck, and he's able just to go over the gate, and I think basically get back on their trail faster than they would have assumed. So yeah, Jack and Furiosa think they are in the clear, but then they notice Dementis behind them, and of course his gang of men. They try to get away, but Dementis is able to jump. This was kind of a cool scene. They have this wide shot where like they get on the other side of this ravine from Dementis, but then as they're driving, like the ravine is getting narrower, and then it gets to this spot where the gap in the ravine is small enough that Dementis is able to jump over it with his monster truck, which was a pretty cool scene. And then he basically gets side by side with their car, and Furiosa has her arm out the window. Maybe she's going to try to shoot him or something. I don't quite remember. But basically, what happens, and we knew this. This is the thing about prequels: is you're going to get there eventually. He basically, her arm gets pinned between the monster truck and the side of her car and gets all messed up. I mean, we knew she was going to lose her arm eventually. We just wondered how. And also, like, as soon as she drew the map on her arm, I was like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. We know she's going to lose her arm. She's going to lose the map or whatever, But then their vehicle gets tipped over. Okay. So then they go over, and Dementis finds out that they're still alive, which makes him happy because he wants to torture them basically. But during the fighting, Dementis's cloak got covered in dirt, so it's all black. And I'm not 100% about this, but I'm pretty sure now he's like, he calls himself Black Dementis. Is that racist, by the way? I mean, if I was wearing a white shirt and I slipped and fell through a chimney and got soot all over it, would I be in the clear to call myself Black Zach, do you think? Something to think about. Let me know. So he chains Furiosa to the back of his truck and forces her to watch Jack get basically pulled behind a motorcycle and like slowly eaten by dogs that are chasing him for like what seems like they do kind of like a montage. I'm like, how long did this go? Apparently several hours. Basically, Dementis, though, he finally gets tired of it. But so then he notices that somehow Furiosa sawed off her broken arm and got away on a motorcycle. Now, here's my thing: is like, I know there's all these motorcycles going around, lots of noise, lots of screaming, and even if Furiosa is tough enough to saw off her broken arm without making noise. Like, did people really take their eyes off of her for that long? This is a part of the movie that I thought was a little far fetched. Um, you know, but Dementis goes back there and basically just her arms in the chain, and she's gone. Apparently, she's not gone by much because they do start chasing her. She's on a motorcycle, but she does get away. But again, I thought that a little far fetched that nobody would have noticed that she got out of there. But it is what it is. So she winds up in the desert outside of the Citadel. She ends up passing out, and she wakes up in one of those like caverns that she was almost pulled into before, one of those caverns of like the poor people that live right out the Citadel. And this was kind of a grotesque scene because like she wakes up first of all next to all these dead bodies covered in like there's flies all over the place. But then we see with her wound, like it's full of like maggots and stuff crawling around. So a little more grotesquerie there for you. But then she thinks these people that are in this cave with her probably mean to do her harm, which is probably true, even though they haven't killed her yet. So she gets out of there, and she basically runs outside and she tells the guards who she is, and they're like, "Oh yeah, how did you get here?" So they pull her up on that platform they used to race things, and they race her back into the Citadel. I might have the timeline of here a little jarbled, but basically it's during this time she ends up constructing her mechanical arm that we see in Fury Road. I believe it was like a weird arm that was attached to like a wheelchair kind of, but she takes it and she makes it into her mechanical arm. And also we get in one movie a second haircutting scene. She cuts her hair short again. I've heard that is like kind of a trope of sorts. You also see that in the movie like G.I. Jane, and I think there's a few others where like women cut their hair to like symbolically show like a change of attitude. So I don't know. It might be a trope, but there you go. So in the war room, they see through their big telescope that there's a big cloud of smoke, and it looks like Dementis blew up Gastown. And they're kind of debating, like, "Oh, he wouldn't do that. It's a ruse." And some people are saying, "Yeah, they think he did." So Scrotus wants to. I think he thinks maybe it's legit. He wants to bring the soldiers to Gastown. But then Furiosa enters the room and basically tells them, that's a ruse. He wants you to go to Gastown. And Joe believes her. So what Joe's going to do is he's going to make it look like they're going to go to Gastown to throw off Dementis. But really, he is going to leave the Citadel protected. So this works. Basically, he leaves just a small convoy of guys, but they pull like a tire or something behind in the sand to kick up a bunch of sand to make it look like, oh, there must be this huge convoy headed to Gastown. And Dementis sees this, and he's like, oh yeah, my plan worked. So now we can go attack the Citadel. Now, something they do here, I think was kind of a mistake. It didn't really make sense. So just instead of having like one big battle here, they basically do a montage, and they say that the battle between Dementis' troops and the Citadel lasted 40 days. They call it like the 40-day war or something like that. And to me, I don't know. Didn't make a lot of sense to me. I think they should have just made it like one big conflict and been over with it rather than like just do this weird montage and say it lasted 40 days. I wasn't sure exactly what the point of that was. But eventually Joe wins out and Dementis is forced to retreat. So Furiosa once again puts on her trademark grease paint and tells her crew that she's going to need a vehicle. And they're like, we don't have any spare vehicles. But one of the men, he's like, I have something. So he gives her like this real beat up, piece of trash thing that's missing a tire. It's only got 3 tires. And so she drives that out on the battlefield. And I think, um, so Scrotus and Rictus, they're basically fixing up this like actually decent car to go after Dementus. And I believe they borrow like another tire from this thing she's driving, as well as like some gas or something. But as Scrotus and Rictus are arguing, um, Furiosa steals that car and drives off in pursuit of Dementus. So now, final chapter, chapter 5, Beyond Vengeance. So Dementus and his men are fleeing. Dementus once again is back on his 3 motorcycle chariot thing. One of his men gets sniped, and Dementus can see Furiosa's car coming towards him. So what he does is he makes one of his men take his chariot and wear his cloak to draw her away from him. And then he's going to take a motorcycle one direction. The chariot's going to go one, straight forward. And then another guy on another motorbike is going to go in another direction. So Furiosa pulls up, and she sees that the other motorcycles are going, but she decides to go after the chariot. She ends up knocking the chariot into a sinkhole, but she notices that, the guy driving was not Dementus. So she goes to the top of a hill and looks through her sniper scope. She can see one of the other motorcycle guys. He ends up getting killed by another group of motorcycle marauders, and his mask is taken off, and she can see, okay, that guy's not Dementus either. So now she knows the other motorcycle trail has to be Dementus. So now we cut to Dementus sleeping in kind of like a makeshift tent. He goes to get a drink of water, but his water jug has been emptied. He goes outside, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, like his motorcycle tire was taken off, so he can see. He knows that Furiosa is there, and he's like, "Oh, you found me, did you?" Or, because he knows something's up. And then, of course, Furiosa appears behind him. He tries to shoot her, but she apparently also took the bullets out of his gun while he was sleeping. So she's definitely trying to, torture him a bit here. So he tries to run, but she gets back in her car and catches up. She also toys around with him a bit here, where like he starts going back towards the car, and she'll like, back it up a little. Like she's definitely like playing around with him a little bit. But then he basically gets down on the ground and totally surrenders. So she gets out, and she asks if he remembers who she is. And I forget his exact dialogue here, but he's basically saying like he's killed so many people that no, he doesn't remember her or her mom. And he says he has this whole speech where he's like, "We're the same. We were traumatized." He again references his dead family. He's like, "We're traumatized and we're depressed and so hurt that we hurt other people to feel better. But it never lasts. And eventually we got to hurt more people and more people and more people." He says that hope is pointless. But then, and I also thought this was a bit elaborate. So he sees a knife in her boot and he goes for it. But then, like, it's just the knife handle. So presumably this is another thing she set up, like, to give him false hope. And I'm like, okay, it seems maybe a little over the top that she would have done that, but okay, I'll go with it. And he's like, that wasn't hope, that was just instinct. She knocks him out. And this is something I would be curious to go back. Again, trouble with prequels is like, so she has this little pull cable in her mechanical arm. She pulls that, and that basically allows her to operate like the mechanical like pinchers on her arm. And now I'm curious, like, to go back and see Fury Road and see like if that little ripcord was there in Fury Road, because I don't remember that in Fury Road seeing that. Um, but yeah, she does that, and she uses her mechanical hand to cut the chain teddy bear off of him. When he comes to, he then recognizes her as the little girl from years prior. I think he called her like Little D, as in Little Dementis, when she was a little kid. So he does that again here. She puts a gun to his head and is apparently conflicted about what she's going to do. And here's the thing. I think they leave it a little abstract as to what she actually does. I don't know if you're totally to believe what you see. So, because now we get a narration from the history man, and he basically narrates that there's speculation about what she did to Dementis, and like some people want to believe that she did more than just shoot him in the head. Like maybe she ran him over with a car, and I think maybe they added some other things in there. But then he's like, I heard from Furiosa herself or something like that, that apparently, so apparently, and again, I don't know if this is for sure what happened or if this is supposed to be like a multiple choice, like maybe she did this, maybe she didn't. But she basically, it looks like she kept Dementis alive, and somehow like used her seed to grow a tree out of like basically his dick. Uh, and it like grew, and like so basically she keeps his body alive, and it also somehow feeds the tree and eventually blooms apples, which she shares with Joe's wives. So kind of like, again, like the ultimate, again, the chapter title is Beyond Vengeance, so I guess if she pulled that off, that's that's what it would be. um but again, I don't know if we're meant to believe that that's concretely yes exactly what she did, or if it's like, oh, maybe she did just shoot him in the head instead. But I don't know. But anyway, the movie ends with Joe's brides getting into the war rig um, again, and that leads to uh, that fades into the credits. And then as the credits are going, because that's basically what started off the events of Fury Road. It's she, taking Joe's brides and trying to free them. And then in the credits of the movie, it flashes to scenes from Fury Road, basically saying, oh, this is where it leads into Fury Road. So, again, is it as good as Fury Road? No. Is it damn good? Yes. And also, look, prequels are tricky. Most of them not very good. And this is a prequel that you can firmly put on the good list. So I guess the question comes down: what would I give this movie? Scale of 1 to 10. I'm going to give this movie a solid 8 out of 10. I think this is Fury Road. I can nitpick Fury Road a little bit, but I would probably still give it like a 9.5, 9.7 out of 10. Fury Road, fantastic. But Furiosa, a worthy, I guess you'd say follow up, even though it's a prequel. But yeah, how many prequels can you think of that are actually good? Of course, the Star Wars prequels, infamously, most people hate them. I know they have their fans, and that's great. But yeah, it's actually comment below, because I'm sure there are probably some other good prequels that I'm just not thinking of. But God, it's got to be a pretty short list. But so it's good that Furiosa can be on that list of good prequels. But yeah, that's my notes. Hey, big thanks to anybody who followed along. Again, I like having a co-host with these things. But hey, you out there, you can be my co-host. So please, the spots here where I was maybe a little fuzzy, comment below, fill me in on anything I missed, anything I got wrong. Um, I like to know that. And hey, if you have suggestions, again, I might have to do some more of these solo shows. So I'm thinking maybe I'll do some TV reviews as well, possibly. So let me know if you'd like me to review anything in particular. I could also possibly revisit, an old movie or show if you'd like. Um, and also let me know, do you prefer the shorter style reviews or do you like doing these deep dives, explorations? Let me know that as well. But anyway, I thank you for listening. Remember, you can find us on YouTube. Please subscribe, if you will. You can also subscribe in audio form on your podcast catcher of choice. Please leave thumbs up, lots of comments, positive reviews, 5-star reviews. But anyway, that will do it. Man, I forget when I do this show all by myself, I start to forget. But that's gonna do it for all of our shenanigans and poppycock this week. Please, please, please tune in again next week. Bye, guys.